Byron, it's good to be with you today. Last time we were together, it was December last year at a certain red heifer selection process.
Yeah.
It's pretty crazy, wasn't it?
It was very crazy, Caleb. It was good to see you.
It's good to see you. In fact, you're the head of an organization called Boneh Israel that was instrumental in the red heifer selection process. Many may be wondering, what does Boneh Israel mean?
Well, so the word boneh it means to build or construct, and so it's to build up or construct in Israel. So it's a Zionistic type term where we're going to go over and see the promise of God fulfilled. The covenant of Abraham was for the land to be given to the people, and so that is what we see the Lord doing here in these last days, and it's happening.
And so I've been following the red heifer search pretty much all my life. I've been watching since I was a kid, Zoe Levitt ministry. Zoe Levitt would go to each spot where they would have this newest red heifer. You know, is this the one? Is this the one? I'd write papers about it for high school. But I never thought I would be there when they were actually selected. How does that make you feel that you took part in a 2,000-year search that finally was completed?
You know, it is it's unbelievable to be in this, except for one thing. When I was 13 years old, I was reading in the book of Romans, and as I read in the book of Romans, Paul, he first had told us, he explained, you know, what it is that we're covered with this flesh that's sinful, and we have a spirit inside of us that wants to be righteous and right. And he's explaining how we could get to that place by the Spirit of Yeshua living inside of us. And I believed in that with all my heart. And just past that, when you read into Romans 9, 10, and 11, you see that Paul starts beseeching us. He says, I was sent to the Gentiles so that they might know about this God of Abraham, and that was his job. But he says that we as Gentiles should do everything we can for the Jewish people. Now, I was 13, and that was in 1969.
Wow.
Yeah, and I didn't even know there was an Israel or what a Jew was, but I'm living in Texas, and I'm reading that, but as I read that, Paul says he would give up his eternal soul for his Jewish fathers of the faith.
Wow.
And as I read that, my heart was just touched, and I thought in my heart, I would really like to help the Jewish people. And when I thought that, it's the only time this ever happened in my life, but I heard the voice of God. And he didn't speak to me. He spoke to a person on my right, and he said, I'm going to use him with the Jewish people. I heard it. And then the one on my right said, well, he'll be a failure because he's full of sin, lust of every kind, and there won't be anything he can do for you. And that was the end of the conversation. Now, I'm going to tell you, Caleb, I didn't jump up the next morning and go tell my teachers. And I didn't tell my friends.
They think you're crazy.
No, they all go. And so the story is I didn't tell anybody for 30 years.
Wow.
I was 43 and still knew exactly 0 Jewish people.
Yeah.
But I read the Bible my whole life. I'd studied the Bible. I knew about Israel being exiled into the nations, and then Judah later on, and so I understood all those things, but I still didn't know any Jewish people in 1996. But I was getting married to my very best friend. We'd been friends for 10 years, and I said, Tammy, before we get married, I'm going to tell you something that I heard when I was 13, and I've never told anybody. And so I just told her what I told you just now, Caleb. Yeah. And she looked me dead in the eye, and she said, Byron, that's going to happen. I said, do you really think that's going to happen? She says, it's got to. A 13-year-old boy wouldn't hear something like that unless it was God. And so just by faith, we trusted it would. But I have to tell you, we didn't plan all this. We just lived our life and took care of our kids. And God, just as we tried to honor him, he just opened the doors and he's used us. And so here we are. So yeah, it's a surprise.
Yes.
But at the same time, it's a fulfillment of what I heard from a very young age.
I think it's interesting, you know, we can't in and of ourselves cause a prophetic fulfillment. There's 2,000 years of people trying everything in their own power. This isn't going to happen unless God allows it, and it's his sovereign timing. So it looks like this was a fulfillment that 5 red heifers have been selected. What's next for Boneh Israel? I heard something about building the 3rd temple. That's a big thing.
Yeah, well, that's a heavy lift. Red heifers was a heavy lift.
Yes,
them there. The idea behind the what we're doing now is the whole thing about the red heifer is until the ceremony of the red heifer happens, then there's not enough purity of the priesthood that would be responsible to build the temple.
That's right.
So they have to be sprinkled with this clean water, these ashes from the red heifer, and then they can start the process of building a temple. Now, we believe that the time has come that the world would say, shouldn't everyone be able to pray freely on the temple mountain of God? I mean, as of right now, the Muslims can pray there, but they don't allow Christians or Jews or Buddhists or any other religion to come pray. And so what the Jewish fathers of our faith would like is to build a house of prayer for all nations so that everyone can come and pray and be on God's holy mountain and let him be God and direct us all and bring us to a place of peace. So it sounds scary to a lot of people that there would be a temple built there, but it's called for in the book of Revelation. It says it's going to be God's temple built on the Temple Mountain. And so we believe that's supposed to happen. And we do think that God honors when people work towards something, his people love him enough to honor him and work towards something, that he comes along behind that and he makes things happen. So you got to put your feet in the water before the waters will open. And so we're just trying to put our feet in the water with that.
And you wrote a paper called A Christian Response to the Third Temple, and in it, you answer the questions that many Christians are asking. Okay, so why do we want to build a third temple if the next temple, according to Christian eschatology, is the tribulation temple, which the beast desecrates?
Yeah.
And it startles a lot of people because, such as Zechariah 13:8, you hear of the conclusion of this time of Jacob's trouble. The last 3.5 years of the tribulation is that 2/3 of the population of Israel perish. And so they're like, well, does this hasten the destruction of the Jewish people by building a third temple? What would you say to that?
So what I say to that is the question we need to ask is, do we want the Messiah to come?
Yes.
Because he's not going to come without that happening. So to work towards seeing him come is what our Jewish fathers in the faith want to do. They want to see the Messiah come. And we should all want the Messiah to come. And until God's temple is there, then he can't come. Now the Antichrist, he does come, but his time is short. You know, we talk about 2/3 of the population. I read that as 2/3 of the Earth's population. It's going to be a really hard time. And when we see that, it is going to be a horrible and hard time that comes upon the earth. But it's going to happen. And I really am ready to see us step up. The world is getting
pretty hairy.
Bad situation.
Yes,
you know, we have countries that are talking about nuclear war.
I know.
And it's going to be some of that's what's going to cause that for the world. So we need the Messiah to come, and this is the step towards that, is build the temple, God's temple, so that can happen.
So do you believe construction will begin? Some people believe, according to eschatology, that there needs to be a peace treaty signed between Israel and her enemies for the initiation of the temple building to begin. Do you see us as Christians being there for that process? Are y'all good? Do you think we're going to see the temple preparations begin, or are we going to be out of here at that point?
Well, you know, who knows? I mean, the question is, I don't know. I'm not a prophet, and the Lord hadn't spoken to me about anything like that. But let me just say that we already saw the Abrahamic Accords happen. And what everyone said was, when that happens, there's going to be war. It's going to just fall. There's people going to be shot. It's going to be horrible. And what happened whenever they got signed? Peace came instead. I think that when we come to the place where we are able to build a third temple and everyone can come to the Temple Mountain, and there's security by Israel, Israel's now strong. You know, you got to remember, when they were a 19-year-old nation and they made an agreement with Jordan that Jordan would keep peace on the Temple Mountain, that was 50 years ago. And they're responsible, Jordan is, to keep peace. But Caleb, there hadn't been peace on the mountain, right?
No.
If I make a deal with you and you're going to keep peace, and for 50 years you don't do it, you think at some point I might say, you know what, Caleb, I appreciate you trying, but I'm going to step up and take care of that. And I think Israel's at the place now, maybe their political leaders are going to say, you know, that's our Temple Mountain, and we want the Muslims to keep the Dome of the Rock. We want that all to stay in place, okay? We're not here to fight against people. We're here to bring peace. And I live there, and I know that's the heart of the people there.
The Jewish people do want peace.
Yeah, they want peace. But the only way you're going to get peace is to have everything be in one piece. And so I think, as you know, in the book of Joshua, through Moses, the Lord tells Joshua to go into the land and be brave and step up. And so I think it's time for our political leaders to be brave, to step up and say, we're not doing this to be ugly to anybody, to hurt anyone, but it's time for Jerusalem to start stepping into its role. Because from the very beginning in the book of Genesis, we see this story that there's a kingdom going to come.
Yeah.
And this kingdom is going to be a kingdom of peace that has a king that reigns from the place that God selects, which winds up through David being told that it's the Temple Mountain and from Jerusalem. And when that happens, then this kingdom is going to be a kingdom of peace over the whole earth. The Babylonians didn't like that message. They wanted to be the kingdom that ruled the earth. So they came in and destroyed the temple. They destroyed the city of David where all the kings were born, which was Bethlehem. They wiped it to the ground. And they were trying to get rid of that promise of a kingdom of peace that was from the house of Judah. And then you see the Romans come in and do the exact same thing. And today, many nations, and we see this in the book of Daniel, there'll be these many nations that still don't want to see this kingdom come to Jerusalem. But the time is here. And I believe, that's what I believe, and I believe that the kingdom is about to come and that peace will reign. And yes, there's a short period of time of 3.5 years that we all have to be prepared for. But whether we go through it to 3 years from now, or we go through it 30 years from now, or 300 years from now, there's a group of people have to go through it. And I, for one, would just soon go ahead. I'm from Texas, you know, so let's get it on.
I think we can both agree that there will not be peace on earth through all the nations until Yeshua is sitting on the throne in Jerusalem, until the Messiah has come. And that's what I'm waiting for.
Yeah.
I want to see that day. And so I appreciate you taking time to speak with me today, Byron. And is there any website that we can search you by?
Yes. And let me, before I give you the website, let me just say this. You know, God, He orchestrates things. And what He orchestrated within the Jewish people and in the fathers of our faith was a great desire to keep the law, to keep the Bible for us, so that we would have that. And there, even we see even the whenever Paul comes back to Jerusalem, and he's reporting how many Gentiles have come to the faith in Yeshua. And then he gets a report from James and the apostles saying, yeah, we're doing the same thing with the Jewish people. It's just everyone's coming to belief in Yeshua. But here's the problem, Paul. The Jewish believers all want to continue to keep the sacrifices and the temple. And it's very important to them. And they've heard that you don't think that's what should happen. And so will you go and shave your head and take a Nazirite vow? And so he said yes, because he understood that the Jewish fathers of the faith were placed there by God to keep those things. It's very physical for our fathers of faith. To this day, they're physical. They're everything they see is about the physical. They're desiring more spirit. Okay. Now we, on the other hand, in the nations, we're just spirit, spirit, spirit. We sometimes, I have to tell you, you know, we go for replacement theology.
We spiritualize everything, yeah.
Over spiritualize. Yeah. So I think there's a hunger in the church because of all the desire to know more about the feast of the Lord, to know about the Torah and how to speak Hebrew. These things, we're starting to see the church worldwide hunger for more physical. And to me, that's so exciting because what you get here is Jesus says the day will come when we will worship in both spirit and in truth, which is the physical. And so as we come together, fathers of our faith and the children of the faith scattered in the world, then we unite and we satisfy God. In the book of Malachi, in the last of our Old Testament, said if the fathers and the children don't come to a place where they love each other, there'll be a curse on the land. And the land is the covenant. So it's just so important that we get behind fathers of faith as they work through the process of following the law. And through that, we've had the promise there that the truth of the Messiah will come out for all of us. That's what I believe. So our organization is bonehisrael.com. You can go to BONEHISRAEL. I think that's how you spell Israel.com. And please come. We need your donations. We're feeding the cows. By the way, Caleb, I'll let the rabbis talk about this a little bit more, but we had an amazing day last week where we went to Shiloh. We've entered into an agreement with Shiloh to have the red heifers there so that people from all over the world can come to Shiloh and see them. We need to build a center there for them, and that's probably going to be about $3 million. But the government's actually going to also come in and put money into that project there. So we're really excited about that development. So come join us, be a partners, and let us know how we can work together.
Good talking to you, sir.
Too, Caleb. Love you.